vulnerability, we're going to talk about authentication part. So if we talk about the authentication is our OWASP top 10 A2. So if we talk about the OWASP top 10, and if we talk about the authentication of our Port Swagger Academy, so that would be our A2, which known as broken authentication. So first of all, we're going to talk about the authentication word. Authentication means getting access to the application, which we already a part of that. I guess you heard about the three things, which is your AAA. One is you call authentication. One is known as authorization, and one is known as accounting. Sorry. And yeah. So authentication means we already have the database credentials, an application. Authorization means permissions or control. Or we can say control. And accounting means specific period of time to be logged in. Session related data. So these three things are important in whenever you're doing a login to an application. For example, you will see AAA, authentication, authorization, and accounting. These are the three important elements of your login part. But today we're going to talk about the authentication part, that is our broken authentication on OWASP top 10 A2. And let's see about a few definitions of OWASP top 10. OWASP top 10 Gray Campus. So we have the first one. Yes, so over here we can see, where is it? This one, the broken authentication part. So as on the screen, you can see over here, they have given a proper deleted data. Broken authentications occur when the application mismanage session-related information such that the user identity get compromised. The information can be in the form of session cookies, password, secret keys, etc. The aim here is to either get into someone else's session or use a session has already ended by this user or steal session-related information. So what could be the possibilities, vulnerabilities of your broken authentication? A weak encryptions, a session cookies, or the password. It could be anything over there. For example, they have given how to examine the broken authentication. For example, you can say press back button after the logout to see if you can get to the previous session or not. This was a vulnerability where an attacker log out to the application and then he press it back to get access to the previous sessions. If you get the sessions related data, then it could be known as broken authentication part. Sometimes an attacker can simply change the page or try to hit the URL directly after logging out if we can able to access the page or not. Again, they have given a vulnerability that simply if we can get access to that application or not. Check the presence of session related information in the URL. This is also important. Try to manipulate them to check if you are able to write someone else's session. Sometimes they found some data on the backend of the source code. For example, they can find the data on the credentials left. Try finding the credential in the source code, right click on the page and view the source. And sometimes coder hard-coded the credential for easy access. So yeah, this is a normal thing. Sometimes we get some sensitive information on the backend of the source. It should not be accessible. So what is exactly the authentication part? As I mentioned, authentication is a part where a simple user has the credentials of that application to be accessed. You can see here, some attacker is using someone's normal, if he knows the Carlos user email ID, he can use the Carlos email ID and he can simply enter to forget password, and the forget password will be went to the vulnerable application and it will be accessible by the user Carlos, and the Carlos will be redirected to the user website to the attacker. So well, this is a normal thing. Basically, they are changing the host header. See, they have changing the host header injection, that they can change that data parameter according to their own need. So what exactly the authentication means over here? That's the important part. What exactly the authentication word means? So authentication is a process, you can see, or you can say verify to given a user or a client. It involves making sure that they really are who they claim to be. Means they are the part of the applications. At least at the part, websites are exposed in anyone who is connected to the internet by design. Therefore, robust authentication mechanism are integral aspect of aspects of web security. सो मेजरली ये बात ऑथेंटिकेशन की बात मैं अगर करूँ, ऑथेंटिकेशन में क्या होता है कि सिंपल आप उस एप्लीकेशन का पार्ट हो और यू ऑलरेडी हैव द क्रेडेंशियल्स टू गेन एक्सेस ऑन दैट एप्लीकेशन. So three elements should be known. So there are three factors of authentication, three authentication factors. They have given something you know. Something you know means you have the username and password, and you have you have such as password or the answer of the secret questions. You already know that thing, something you know. These are sometimes referred to as knowledge factor. Remember the last time DAC, PAC, and RBAC? Same thing is over here. Something you have means it could be a physical object like your cell phones or your secret token. A security token is assigned by the server side. And this is also known as position factors. Something you use, something you are. Something you are means they are basically used some biometrics, patterns, or behaviors. See? So these three elements should be known. Something you know, something you have, something you are. They are known as knowledge factor, position factors, and inheritance factors. These things are important over there, one by one. So my major component of this security mechanism is which will be to understand the core mechanism and the web application testing part. But over here, we're going to talk about the authentication part. So if we talk about what exactly the difference between the authorization and authentication, remember one thing, authentication and authorization are two different things as I mentioned you over here. Authentication, data credentials of an app that you already claim to be a part of that. And authorization is just like permission and a control. So you have to think about the application part. Authentication is a process of verifying that the user really is who they claim to be, whereas authorization involves verifying whether the user is allowed to do something. It means permissions. In the context of the website or the web application, authentication determines whether someone's attempting to access the site with the username Carlos123 or it has the same username password. And once Carlos123 is authenticated, his permission determine whether or not to be authorized to get access to the application. So over here, the most important thing we're going to talk about in the authentication part of broken access control, it's all about the brute force attack. Today, we're going to learn about what is called brute force attack. So if you see over here, most vulnerabilities in the authentication mechanism are known as two ways. One is your brute force attack and one is your logic flow. So authentication mechanisms are weak because they fail to adequately protect against brute force attack. Logic flows are poor coding in the implementation of allowed authentication bypass entirely by attackers. Logic flow means the poor code execution part. It's sometimes referred as broken authentication. If I talk about the brute force attack, see over here. A brute force attack is when an attacker uses a system of a trial and error in attempting to guess the user credentials. These attacks are typically automated by using a word list of username and password. See. Automating this process, especially using dedicated tools, potentially enables an attacker to make vast number of login attempts at high speed. So over here, they have mentioned all the things over here one by one, which can be used over there. Brute forcing is not always just a case of making completely random guesses at username and password. So let's try one of the attack over here. So we're gonna talk about it on the later part. So let's start with the first thing. So we're gonna talk about vulnerabilities in password login based. So we're gonna talk about over here. We're gonna talk about brute forcing. We're gonna talk about the brute force attack over here. So as I mentioned, brute force attack is an attack where an attacker simply use some trials and errors to guessing the exact username and password, which is deleted on the web application part. So whenever we are entering a username and password 1 or 3 or 4 times, it should be blocked us in the fourth attempt. But if the application is not blocking and the client requests for the in the fourth attempt, there would be a proper broken authentication attack. So see over here, automating this process, especially using dedicated tools, potentially enables an attacker to make vast number of login attempts at high speed. Login attempts over here. So let's try one of the brute force attack that we're gonna talk about over here. So brute forcing usernames. See, usernames are generally easy to guess if they confirm the recognizable pattern, such as an email address. For example, if a very common to see business login in the form of first name, last name @ somecompany.com. Yeah, this is the most common thing. Sometimes people say we have a username password on there. So you can such as admin administrator, brute forcing the password. So brute forcing the password is the important part. Why? Because a minimum number of characters, a mixture of lower and uppercase letters, and at least of special characters. Yeah, sometimes we use this type of things to guessing the correct password over here. So you can see over here, password can simply be brute forces with a difficulty variety based on the strength of the password. Strength of the password, simple, we can talk about over here. So if you talk about the password should be a simple password. A simple password, what could be this one? Let's say hacker 2020. This would be a simple password. So if I can change this hacker word into something else like HO CK3 capital R 2K20. So now I can see this is the strength of the password. So we are using some numeric values, some special characters, and some upper and lower case. So in this scenario, what we're gonna do over here, we're gonna try to enumerate these things. So let's have a look. What would be the possibilities? So our first trial would be to have a proper guessing the username, a correct username to be understandable. So username enumeration is when an attacker is able to observe the changes in the web application behavior in order to identify whether the given username is valid or not. Yes. So we're gonna try to enumerate the usernames over here. So let's try with the first one. So we have the username enumeration by different response. Let's see over here. So this lab's vulnerable to username enumeration and password brute force attack. This is an account with a particular username and password which can be found in the word list. So we have two word lists which has some usernames and we have a password list also. Which has contained some passwords 1 2 3 4 5 6 password 8 QWERTY and normal things over the web. So let's try with the access part. Let's try to access. So before that one, if you are not familiar with these things, I will say kindly check the things one by one. So let me show you how does it look like. So let's access the username. We like to be blogs. So we have a simple blogging part over here. So we have a login part. So in this thing, we have to enumerate the usernames. Username enumeration by different response code. A response code from the server side. So we're gonna do username and password over here. Let's try with the 1 and the 2. I guess, yeah, 2 is okay. So what we're gonna do over here, we're gonna try to intercept the packet and we're gonna try to use intruder today. Yes, we can see the username and password is when you set over here, and we have a session token. So this is not the CSR of attack over here. We're gonna try to post the username and password, and over here we're gonna try to send this request to the intruder. I'm going to drop the packet because I don't want to use this packet again. So back. So in intruder, we can see the host, which is our target, and the port 403 is using. Positions is the important part. So we have four position payload over here, and we're going to try to use brute force attack. So the most common thing we're going to try is to simply change the values. But I have 4 parameters. So let's clear the tags one by one. Yep. So the first thing first, we can try to use to identify the correct username. So I'm going to use this one. I'm going to highlight the first parameter value, and I'm going to do add parameter. Why? Because we're going to try to brute force on the username parameter. And the tag type I'm going to use is sniper. And the payload, in the payload section, we're going to use it for our dictionary to be attached. So we're gonna upload our dictionary over here. So let's load dictionary. We have as I forget to tell you about, I already have the dictionary in my word list. So you can see over here in exploit dictionary, and you can see username. I already make a word list with the same dictionary. Yes, so we have 2 positions. We have only 1 positions. We're going to try to use on this first payload. So I'm going to use the username dictionary. So let's try with this one. So in the option tag, you have to select into the type of tag. So we're going to try the number of threads will be 5 and the retry is 3. Yeah, normal thing. Let's start. So the scan has been done, and what I can see over here, I can simply observe that this parameter value can be done by the attacking type. So we have to observe the correct user with the response code. The response code means the length of the packet. So over here, if you select the first one, root, see this one. The first user was root over here. And what we're going to do over here, we're going to try to use some different techniques and methods over here. So we have the username root, and let's see the response code. Invalid username. So this should be not there. If the client root is the genuine one, because the status code is 200. The status code, the response code is 200, means it found, it's completed the request from the client side. But over here, we need to identify the exact parameter. So sometimes you will see there is the length of the packet. Length of the packet means the packet execution part. We have to check the maximum length. The maximum length of the packet means the better execution, the possibilities over there. So you will see that this 3186 is the maximum length all over here, which is ADSL. See this one. So they are using ADSL. Let's copy this one first of all, yes, and let's check the response code. Incorrect password, because I didn't set the password. The username is exist over there. The maximum length of the packet will indicates that the packet has been executed, and this was the specific packet on the server side, which can be used for the further state. First thing first is to check the response code. The response code is an important thing. Let's try to use this username and try to brute force on the password parameter. What will happen? Let's see. When you find that this is a specific username, for example, clear tag, and I'm going to change the parameter value with my ADSL, and I'm going to attack now on the password parameter. Add tag. Sniper, same sniper attack we're going to do, because we're going to perform a brute force attack on the password parameter. And let's see on the payloads. Yep. So we're gonna remove this type of payloads over here, and we're gonna add the password.txt file, which contains the words over here. So let's go options and let's start attacking. And what I can see over here, all the things are execution. We have some 400 also, some 400 requests also, which is our bad request. Bad request you can see over here. Invalid CSR token. So what we can do, if they found something, if they found something like relevant data, we can try to use only 300. Redirection means the packet has been executed or we have redirected to a different page. Simply अगर आप कोई यूजर नेम पासवर्ड डालते हो लॉगिन फॉर्म से, वो आपको रीडायरेक्ट कर देता है किसी और ऑथेंटिकेटेड पेज पे जहाँ पे आपकी वैलिड आपकी डेटा एग्जीक्यूट करती है. तो मैं यहाँ पे फिल्टर यूज कर रहा हूँ जिसमें मैंने यहाँ पे 300 दे रखा है. 300 means found that this code is basically executed over there. And the password over here is my this one. ADSL. Let's try it over here. ADSL and the password 1209. ADSL and the password 123456789. And we are in. See. So this validation, this specific validation depends on the client and response content, which can be used in the very further stages one by one. And broken authentication is a vulnerability. If you check for the website like HackerOne reports, see this one. Let me show you. Broken authentication. Let's try to search some Medium reports, which can help us out there. Broken authentication when an attacker logs into part. When an attacker logs into our web application part, see this one. So broken authentication, if the login functionality of your application can be subverted or bypassed into some way, this is referred to as broken authentication. This is such as common issue that broken authentication is entry in the open web application security project. Types of broken authentication types you can see. Authentication invitation code and application well implemented. You can see over here they have given a lots of things. So what is the exacting chart? And let's try with the broken authentication bug bounty. Bug bounty. Few months ago, I had a pen testing test project of my mobile application. I found an interesting vulnerability which made me capable for compromising an account in their system. I made proxy between the application and internet so I can intercept the request and response in the pursuit. Normal thing we have to use for this one. So what could be the possibilities? They simply authenticated change. Okay, user type the email address into hit enter and backend makes sure the email address exists. The backend makes a unique token and save it to the database. Then backend send the token to the email address user entered. The user click on the reset password link. The backend verifies that token is true. Then HTML forms is shown. The user fills the password field and the password and the token is sent to the over the system. The backend server the token and that password is changed. This vulnerability dies in the fourth section, in which the backend showed the reset backend to it. Yes, because the email address can be sent to anyone. Okay, so this was a different thing, broken authentication. Let's try how I earned $500 from September 20 on the flow in authentication. See this one. You have to redirect the client request. Yep, see, he got the $500 bounty from the Google Hall of Fame. So you can, if you search for lots of vulnerabilities, you will find lots of stories, latest stories, and new broken authentication mechanisms. So I will say one thing: if you want to try to check broken authentication in web application part, you have to cross verify one by one. For example, let's try with the second one. Let's try with this one. Username and username information by different response code. Let's try this one. So this is also a candidate username and password attack. So we're gonna try to solve this one, but this is a little bit of different. So first of all, as I mentioned you, सबसे पहले आपको आपके वेबसाइट के बिहेवियर को लॉगिन करना है, एग्जामिन करना है. सो मैं इसे एक्सेस करता हूँ. इस वाले वल्नरेबिलिटी में क्या होगा? सिंपल, इस वाले वल्नरेबिलिटी में आपका अटैक टाइप होगा जिसमें हम लोग थ्रू कर सकते हैं. 1 मिनट, मुझे 2 मिनट दीजिए आप लोग.